This is a Shot of Tech, your daily dose of technology, news, and reviews, so stay tuned. All right. Well, welcome everybody. If there are any viewers out there, there doesn't look to be any viewers right now. I'm Kevin Ross. I'm your host today for a Shot of Technology. This is my first broadcast. And what is a Shot of Technology? Now, I've had a couple of YouTube videos that have at least captured the essence of a Shot of Tech, but just to let you know what it is that I'm doing. So first off, I'm a nurse, and of course nurses give shots. We don't like to give shots, but we just do. And of course I'm an entrepreneur, but most importantly when it comes to this broadcast, which will eventually, so I'm on a Google Hangout and this is broadcasting to YouTube. I will also have a podcast for later download or archive listen, if you will. So I am recording this, at least the audio portion of it. Anyway, I'm a nurse, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a tech enthusiast, I'm a tech evangelist, and of course, I guess I'm giving you, a shot of tech, at least a daily dose of technology for you, my opinions, my use cases, how it affects me in my business, and of course, my personal life. And anyway, without further ado, I just wanted to at least start the show off here, launch the show on the heels of CES 2014, of course. Well on the heels, CES is still going on, but of course there's been a lot of news out there and some big news, I think, in my opinion, and I just wanted to basically give you my opinion. And of course, any of the live viewers out there, live listeners, well, not live listeners, but live viewers, that is, feel free to hit me up on social media. Of course, I am on Twitter at Innovative Nurse. For the time being, of course, a Shot of Tech might branch out and, of course, have a new platform. But for right now, everything is under the Innovative Nurse platform at this point. And anyway, let's dive right in as far as what I think is going on at CES and some of the news that's coming out. The thing is that I'm going to give you my opinion, but I'll try not to water it down. I'll give it to you like it is. I'm not going to try to skew your views of how you see things. I am a multi-platform kind of guy or multi-OS kind of guy when it comes to my smartphones and the tablets and the computers that I use in my business and in my daily life. So hopefully I'll try to give you a middle-of-the-road approach, but sometimes I get pretty passionate about some of this stuff, and I wanted to, just forewarn you that sometimes I'm just like, a face-palm moment, like I can't believe it, or I get really excited about stuff because, we get really excited about stuff. So call me a fanboy if you want to, but I'm a fan of what works, and that's kind of the simple, deal here. So whatever works for me, whatever works for you, just implement it however you need to in your professional or personal life. Now, I think some of the big news out there, and I follow a lot of the forums, the sites like Fandroid and Mac Rumors and Android Central and several other ones, The Verge. I love technology, and I know you do too. And of course, it's just interesting to hear and see, visually, on the forums, like people arguing back and forth about who's first and why they're first and who's copying who and who's innovative and not innovative anymore. Whatever. It's your opinion and you're entitled to it, and that's cool. I just like watching it. It's kind of like eye candy for me. I like to tune into those forums and just sort of watch the arguments go back and forth. Whatever. So I think one of the bigger arguments out there right now that's going on is the use of the word or term pro. Now, I'm talking about tablets. Now, of course, Samsung just announced their Pro version of tablets. And there's all of this talk about Apple's iPad Pro, these rumors that are coming out or have been out for quite some time now. And Apple taking the iPad a little bit further, meaning sort of screen real estate. Of course, the iPad Air that was recently announced and launched is a 9.7-inch screen, and there has been rumors to sort of meld the iPad platform or sort of format and put that with the MacBook Air hardware in some way, and have a use case where it's a tablet but still a MacBook Air. Or what is it? I don't know. Is it still using iOS strictly, or is there some kind of dual boot opportunity there where you're booting in, or having OS 10 in there? I don't know. We'll talk about dual boot later because I've got some opinions about that, and of course there's been some news. But anyway, there's been a lot of talk recently on the forums, and again, Mac Rumors was one of them. And of course, I'm a fan over there. I hang out over there and get some tips and news and tutorials. So it is very helpful. But again, it is funny to watch and just see the exchange on there about Samsung and Apple. Now, we know there's a lot of litigation out there. There's a lot of legal stuff happening back and forth. Samsung suing Apple, Apple suing Samsung, and everything in between. Of course, Tim Cook and, of course, the leaders and the CEOs, the decision makers are having to go into mediation coming up, and there was some news about that. But I don't want to talk about that so much right now. But the Pro component here, when we talk about the tablets, so Apple, the iPad Pro, now Samsung announces the Tab Pro, 12.2, 10.1, and so on and so forth, and we'll get into the specs there. But people over on Apple, the fans over there, and again, I'm not trying to call you out individually. I'm just trying to say that it's a matter of, okay, well, so Apple had the Pro rumor. So did Samsung go ahead and say, well, we got to run with this. We got to launch something quick. So within a couple of months, they had something going here, and they launched their own Pro line just to say that they're first. And I know there were a lot of Apple fanboys and girls out there that were agreeing that Samsung was kind of taking that Pro and just running with it and just wanted to be there first. Well, initially I was thinking like, well, what if the rumors had something to do with Samsung? People saw a screen or a form factor that looked very similar to an iPad, or at least a tablet that could have been morphed into an iPad Pro version. Maybe it was just some thing laying around in a conference room. Maybe it wasn't laying around in a conference room, but it was certainly laying around where someone thought, and maybe it didn't have Samsung on it. And so it looked like it could have been an iPad Air Pro or whatever they're going to call it. I don't know what they're going to call it. But anyway, nonetheless, there are these discussions that Samsung, of course, stole that or borrowed it, or whatever you want to, however you want to say it, and now they've launched their Pro line of tablets. And like I said, my initial thoughts were, maybe many of the brands, the companies out there were going for a Pro line because of some of the recent influx of information as far as who's buying up these products. And of course, schools are and businesses are. Yes, I mean, there are plenty of use cases for personal use because people go into an Apple store or some type of Best Buy or wherever they go to purchase a tablet or device or some piece of hardware. So anyway, I just think it's just interesting to see these Pro lines start coming out, and also discussions about Chromebooks and tablet uses, and what's going to work in a business, what's not going to work so much in a business, or what is a business after. And of course, a Pro line might be something for a business use case. Is it for personal? Well, sure, it could be. I mean, quite frankly, I see a lot of people out there just swallowing up the technology or grabbing that device and finding the use case after they've purchased the device. But personally, I think you need to figure out what your use case is first and foremost, and then pick the device that's going to fit that. So that's just my opinion. But also, I am a tech enthusiast just like many of you are, and a lot of times I do grab up this technology. I could be an early adopter, so to speak, with some of this technology, and then you think, oh, this is great. Now how am I going to fit it into my life? But I do try to at least give that advice and take my own advice to find the use case first and utilize it however I need to utilize it, in my business. So that being said, let me just open up the chat here. So if anybody's out there, feel free to comment here in the Google Hangout, on YouTube, or on my Google Plus page here where I'm broadcasting. So Samsung Tab Pro 12.2. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into all of the tech specs here, but we've got a Tab Pro 12.2, a Tab Pro 10.1, and an 8.4. And now, of course, we also have like the Note versions where you have the stylus. I don't really understand the stylus. I've tried to use one. I just am not comfortable with it, so I can't really speak to it. Personally, I just don't like the stylus, but whatever. There's got to be a use case, because in businesses, a lot of business people are used to a stylus form factor, because that's just what they've been either trained or accustomed to do. So maybe in a personal use case, these styli, or however you plural, these styluses, might not be for the average consumer, but in a professional environment, this could be a good thing. The fact that these are LTE devices, everything's built in on the chip, Snapdragon 800 for the LTE version, and I think an 800, 2.3 gigahertz quad core, chip is going to be plenty of horsepower under there. 3 gigs of RAM, on the 12.2, and it looks like the 10.1 has 2 gigs of RAM. Again, I think 2 gigs of RAM is plenty. I've got 2 gigs on my Nexus 5, and it hasn't hiccuped or choked or anything like that. So, I think the OSs can become lighter, so to speak, and are able to not only will apps be able to utilize that RAM, because there are apps that can utilize that RAM, but I think that the OSs that are on the devices can become a little bit lighter so that they're not using all of that RAM, so that our applications can utilize that, so to speak. But is a 12.2 overkill? Now, some of the sites we'll talk about an Android tablet specifically, and Samsung's rumors coming out with a 12-inch tablet. Oh, that's just nuts. That's crazy. Why in the world would they even think about a 12-inch tablet? It's way too big. And then, of course, iPad Pro, the rumors out there about a 12-inch tablet are coming into play, and here they are saying, oh, this could be a great use case. So, where's the Android love? Again, I use Apple products. I've got an iPad, and it's a first-generation iPad, but it still works. I'm actually using an app, BossJock Studio, to help with this podcast. And, of course, I've got a MacBook Pro right over here and an iMac right in front of me. However, I do have a Nexus device, a Nexus 5. If you've watched any of my videos, you've seen the Slim Armor case that I kind of reviewed and talked about. Needless to say, where's the Android love? So Android comes out. Samsung comes out with a 12-inch tablet. Is it good for a consumer? I don't know. It might be a little too wieldy. But where I do see these being a great product because of the UI of it, or the interface rather, and the experience, the UX, the UI, the UX, and of course how everything's laid out with the multiple windows, I could really see this as a great business tool. So let's, for example, I'm a nurse and I work with patients, let's say in their homes, and I want to show them some videos or some tutorials or education about their medications. It would be great to have the real estate, the screen real estate, to be able to hold up a section where it could play a video, and then over here somewhere up in the top corner or down below or whatever, I can even have some tidbits about the medication. So let's say we're talking about an inhaler. I can show a video on how to use an inhaler for someone who has asthma or COPD. COPD, I know tech enthusiasts are like, what did he just say? Just chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So let's just stick with asthma. So I can show a video on how to use the inhaler, and then on that same screen, then I can go over here and say, okay, these are some side effects to consider that you might experience and whatnot. So I really see this as either a prosumer or really a professional product. Can you use it personally? Sure. But let me also give you my opinion is I think that an 8-inch form factor for a tablet is really an ideal size. Now, I've got a 7-inch, or I've got the Nexus 7 2013 iteration, And I think the form factor is just fine. Now, I do keep it in a case, so I'm not going to shove it in a pocket. But some people are saying, well, once you get up to 8 inch, you're going to put it in a pocket. Well, I don't really plan on putting my tablets in a pocket. However, I did want to reiterate that I think that the 8-inch form factor here for a tablet is perfect on the go. I think you get enough screen real estate to do a little bit of work, so that you can be productive. So it's not just a consuming device, but something that you can work on as well. Again, decent real estate to show, in my example, a patient a video on something, and maybe to switch over to the text of information about their medications or whatever it is that they're doing. So anyway, my opinion, I think 8 inch is a perfect size. But if I were in a facility, for instance, so let's say doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals, I could see a 12.2 offering enough real estate and still enough portability for those clinicians to be able to do the jobs. And so I think that Samsung is onto something, but I think that they most likely really need to focus their efforts on the business crowd. Of course, again, I realize like in some cases you got to look at your use case and can you sell more products to the consumer, to the general population, rather than doing B2B or to the business. I don't know. I think Samsung's onto something. But here's the thing. So I told you initially that I was thinking like, oh, these fanboys over here, these Apple, guys and gals talking about, Samsung stole the Pro or borrowed it or whatever they did, and they just wanted to be first. Initially, I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, everybody's kind of going to this Pro thing. So, Apple just didn't invent that, and then everybody was following suit. Because, I mean, they don't even have a product yet. But it was interesting. Let's transition into smartwatches. Now, today, I just saw some news about the Samsung Galaxy S5 launch, and I don't want to talk about the S5 so much because I'm still getting details on that. But what I wanted to call out was smartwatches. I want to talk a little bit about smartwatches, and it looks like, from a quote that I see over here on Fandroid, Samsung admitted, we're talking about smartwatches now, and how there was this whole debacle about, okay, well, Samsung initially, they had a lot of units sell, but really they just had a lot of units ship. Samsung admitted that the original wristwatch wasn't exactly what they want for their first release, but reports say that they're pressured into rushing out a consumer product as they feared Apple would beat them to it. Oy, and this, of course, was written up by Quentin Kennemer. Sorry, Quentin. I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name, but he's over there on Fandroid, a contributor over on Fandroid. So Quentin, anyway, I was glad to read that, but at the same time, facepalm moment where I'm thinking, okay, maybe Samsung isn't so worried about being the first one out there when it comes to a product, but apparently they've admitted, per this article. Again, I'm going to have to dive in a little bit deeper, but it sounds like leadership over there really is following what's going on with Apple, and they too want to be, not the only game in town, but they also want to be, the first. But of course, apparently the technology or the hardware or whatever it is when it comes to the smartwatch wasn't where they wanted it to be. Samsung just put good stuff out there. I like Samsung, and I think many people do. I know there was a lot of discussion out there when they came out with the initial smartphones. Of course, the Galaxy S lines, the Galaxy lines, the first ones. I had the Vibrant, and of course, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is just, it's crap. It doesn't work. It's, crashing, or I don't know what's up with it." So people were really upset about the build quality of those S lines, and I know Samsung kind of took quite a bit of a hit. They've been in the news lately with Apple and ripping off the interface of Android, and I'm so sick of seeing, like, when you compare like iOS, the original iOS, with the app drawer of Android, how they look similar. That's the app drawer. Show the home screen of Android. Anybody knows that the home screen of Android can be customized, widgetized, and all that stuff. So I'm sick of seeing like the comparison of the app drawer with the iOS, and I know many of you are as well. So smartwatches. Why don't we just segue into smartwatches? What in the heck are they? Well, we know what they are, but what's the use case? For me personally, I think these smartwatches are just going to add like another step. So you're saying that on my wrist, I have access. I can text somebody from the wrist. I can answer a phone call from my wrist, and of course, do a couple of other things as well. But with my smartphone, I mean, again, I've got a Nexus 5 device here right in front of me, and with Google Now, I mean, I can just scroll over and get like any news that I want, like the cards. And of course, if you're watching the video, I'm holding up the cards, but I can see that, you know, I get my map about how long it takes me to get somewhere, and there's some news that I really like about the Nexus 10 and the Nexus 7, and weather and whatnot. I don't know. Will a phone take me away from my phone, or I'm sorry, will the watch take me away from my phone, or will it complement the phone? I don't know. For me personally, I just can't see a use case for these smartwatches just yet. But I'm sure as more and more people use them, and we see more videos and commentary and reviews about how we can utilize these in our lives, then maybe, you know, maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I will get a smartwatch. I just don't know which one I would get. I think there's still some fine tuning to consider. Anyway, so I also wanted to talk about the Asus Transformer book. This is a dual boot Windows Android tablet slash notebook. And what's up with the whole dual boot thing? Well, I mean, you know, Apple's been doing it for quite some time as far as dual booting on your device. So you can dual boot into Windows, or you can boot into Windows, or you can boot into OS 10, or, you know, the Apple OS. So that being said, we as a Mac platform, or user of Mac platforms, that is, we've had to still have Windows around for other use cases. Some, like, I have Windows. I have Windows 7. It dual boots on my MacBook, and the only reason I keep it around is for an accounting task that I need at the end of the year, because Intuit will not flippin' make TurboTax or some of the tax software products for filing tax returns for Mac when it comes to business. So Intuit, get with it. And I'll just stop there. But anyway, an Android OS, so a tablet OS, and a Windows boot, or Windows OS, I kind of think that might be a little overkill. I'm not sure. But all right, so let's think about it from a business use case where maybe we need the native apps. We need, you know, things that are just sort of baked into that app, and we see the usability there. So then, but then on the flip side, we want to boot into a full OS on the same piece of hardware, so that maybe we can do the tasks that we couldn't necessarily do on a tablet. Businesses constantly talk about, or Microsoft does a fantastic talking about or regurgitating the information about businesses using Office. Well, Office is a great suite for many businesses, but it's something that we've been trained or accustomed to do day in and day out. And so for me, for probably 95% of the tasks out there that I do, I could certainly use an open platform, an open source platform, and really just use Google Docs. But I think businesses and those who use the software have been accustomed to the visual aspects of Word. I mean, like when you open it up, I mean, there's a little bit of eye candy in there, and you can throw these like pretty graphs in here and do that. Now, I would say that Microsoft has done a fantastic job with Excel. There's not really any, I mean, there's competitors, but I mean, if you're like in accounting or you need those spreadsheets, and they've done a fantastic job. So I can't really knock them for that. But I try, the businesses that I work with, that I consult for, or I'm a partner with, I try to bring them over into the Google Docs realm, because we don't need all of those like macros and this plug-in thing here and this and that. I mean, sometimes we just need a simple doc file to, flesh something out, an outline, or just the content of whatever it is that we're working on. And a Google Doc seems to be, fine for most of what I do. But again, businesses have become accustomed year over year over year just to say, okay, we need Office. Now, again, I personally use Office. I use Office 365 so that I can have that device on multiple, or have that on multiple devices, because I am on the go. I have, a home office, and I work out of other offices. So, and I have multiple devices. So I might grab my MacBook and I still need Office on there and access to that, or I might need to get up in the cloud, go in the cloud on another device and just use it from there, or whatever it is. So a dual boot Windows and Android setup, again, I see this primarily as a business tool. You might call me crazy, and you might think this guy is just totally nuts. This is just silly. But that being said, I just wanted to give my opinion that I think that this Asus dual boot, setup is just, it is what it is. I think it's for, businesses, and will the consumer, appreciate it, use it? Maybe. Sure, I guess. But I don't know. I think we still need a little bit of time. Let's talk about some pretty big news from T-Mobile. What in the world is T-Mobile doing? They have gotten all kinds of, they've just pulled out all the stops, getting aggressive, like this guerrilla marketing campaign or whatever it is that they're doing, and they are just putting it in your face. They want your business. They're not going anywhere. Of course, I know that there's this whole thing about, Sprint, and the CEO talking about, there's all of this, there's all of this available frequency that we can pick up on, these bands, that it's just literally, ripe for the picking. So will Sprint and T-Mobile, get together and be one? I don't know. I don't want to necessarily talk about that. But here's the deal. So apparently, Sprint, for the first time in 8 years, when they were reporting their quarters, they actually added customers. They added, what was it? I think it was 1.6 million. Let me just look this up really quick. 1.6 million net additions in Q4 2013. Now and 4.4 million on the year. Now the interesting thing is that, I'll say interesting, I was actually one of them. Now, I used to be a T-Mobile customer, and then I ended up getting a Nexus device, which I initially used on T-Mobile, and it wasn't doing so hot on T-Mobile. And I use these for business, so I needed, let's say, I needed some reliable connections. And I was doing fine out in the community, but it was my office and my home that I was having issues with. So I went ahead and switched over to AT&T, which, again, if you've got a Nexus device and you know this, you can just take that SIM out and pop another SIM in. And I just ran everything through my business. And of course, because I had my own devices, I didn't have to sign up for an AT&T contract, because I wasn't on a contract with T-Mobile, because I'd been with them for so long that I just kept buying my devices and using those devices and popping the SIM in to, do whatever it is that I needed to do for, that device. Anyway, that sounds confusing. It shouldn't be. But anyway, it might sound that way. So where I wanted to go with this was T-Mobile, in your face, get out of jail free cards for people who want to leave their carriers. Now, here's the thing. They're offering they're offering, it seems to be $650 per person. And I think it's for a family of 5, I believe. For switching over. Now, what does that mean? So you take your device. So let's say I take, of course, this Nexus device. I can take it to either, any GSM carrier, AT&T, T-Mobile, or anybody who uses or piggybacks on a GSM carrier. I can pop that SIM in for the Nexus device. Anyway, let's say that I'm on the AT&T, and I've got an AT&T branded device. I take it over to T-Mobile. They might give me up to, looks like the value of their phone, up to $300. So, if you have something like from, I don't know, 2008, 9 or something, some old phone, you might not get the $300. But if you've got something within the last year, there's a pretty good chance you probably get $300. And I bet you if you even if you brought over some other branded iPhone, iPhone. Well, I mean, Apple products. I mean, um, they retain their value. But anyway, what I wanted to say was, so up to $300 per device that you bring into T-Mobile, and then they say send them the ETF, so that early termination fee that you'll get from your provider. So Verizon, Sprint, AT, well, Sprint seems to have no contract plans either, but I know there are still people that are on contracts. Take that ETF, send it to T-Mobile, and they're going to pay that for you. So that is a huge win for a family who's like, oh, there's no way I can get off of this because we've got 5 people on these, on these lines, each line, and the ETF just adds up. Just multiply that by 5, and then having to buy new phones. T-Mobile wants your business, and talk about a bold move on their part, because ultimately they have these non-contract plans. Now here's the thing. If I were to go and say buy this Nexus device through T-Mobile, what they're going to do is I could sort of, I mean, I hate to use the word subs, but it's a no money down situation, and then you just sort of pay the cost over 24 months. Well, some people are like, well, how's that any different than a contract? Well, ultimately, you can leave T-Mobile. You just owe the difference in the phone from what you've been paying month to month. So if you 12 months, and then after 12 months you just want to jump ship, then, well, you just owe T-Mobile the next 12 monthly payments, whatever that is, in a lump sum. I don't understand, and this is my rant. I don't understand phone contracts. I don't get it. I haven't had a phone contract in years, many years. I've just been one to buy my devices outright. I just buy the device, right then and there, and um, and then I pop the SIM in it, and I go with whatever carrier I want to go with. Now, I recently, within the last couple of months, so the Nexus 5 came out, and immediately, as soon as I got the Nexus 5, I went from AT&T over to T-Mobile. And I think really part of it was the cost factor. For a business account, I was paying twice as much over at AT&T as I was at T-Mobile. And if you're a business person, well, even just financial sense, why would I spend twice as much? Now, I know some of you are going to be like, hold on, dude. I don't even get T-Mobile in my area, or the T-Mobile coverage is shoddy, or whatever. I've been with T-Mobile for years here in Colorado, ever since it was VoiceStream, and then T-Mobile bought them up many years ago. And the coverage has been getting better and better over the years. Now, again, I had that hiccup with that Nexus device, and I don't know if it was the device or what it was. I think it probably was the device. So anyway, I jumped ship over to AT&T, opened up a business account, and I ended up coming back to T-Mobile. And of course, it was really easy. I brought my devices in. The guy had never, it was interesting. It was so funny because these guys were like, oh my gosh, the Nexus 5, it's out, really? And it was, I was an early adopter. I ordered it the day that it launched and got it a couple of days later. So anyway, guys set me up with the business account. It was fairly easy. I just used, I didn't have to use my social security number. It was just my business tax ID. Of course, I've been in business for a while, so my business credit, I guess, was good enough to have, like, I don't know, an insane amount of lines or something, but I didn't need an insane amount of lines. That being said, I felt good that T-Mobile is embracing this whole uncarrier or non-contract approach. I mean, again, I don't understand it. We buy technology all the time. We buy it, like, for instance, if I were to buy this MacBook Pro right in front of me, if I were to go, to whatever Best Buy, Apple Store, or whatever, and then somebody comes and says, "Hey, wait a minute, why don't we subsidize this MacBook Pro for you?" And so you pay a discounted price, but here's the thing. You can only use Comcast, or you can only use Verizon Fios, or whatever that is. I mean, quite frankly, I guess that's how I try to compare it, is using a piece of hardware, technological hardware, but only using it how a company dictates how I use it. Now, I'm not talking about user licenses as far as like how to use the device or the OS or whatever, but what I'm saying is I just don't understand. Why can't we just go buy a phone off the shelf and take it to the carrier that we want to go with? So for me, T-Mobile is working, and it's even better. It really is. The LTE is really fast here in the Colorado area. I'm in the Denver Boulder area, so like I've got some really good download speeds. I don't really drop calls all that much. I mean, and I say all that much, I'm on the phone constantly. I talk thousands of minutes a month, and I text like crazy, all for business. But the thing is that very rarely will I drop the call. I mean, rarely. Maybe once every month or every couple of months or something like that. So I know that that's not the experience for many of you out there. Again, you have to pick the technology, the OS, the platforms, the bandwidth, the spectrum that works for you in your area. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Well, that's all I'm going to say about that. But again, I'm glad that we're moving to this uncarrier, non-contract option. But I know that the technology also has to move in that direction, because this Nexus 5 device that I'm holding right now is a piece of technology that I can go to AT&T or T-Mobile or whatever bands are on here. Now, of course, Verizon and Sprint. I mean, it's not a CDMA phone. But I just like the fact that I can buy this hardware, I can purchase it, and then take it to wherever I want to go. Now, of course, the phone manufacturers and the chip manufacturers all have to get together and say, well, listen, we just need to make one phone. Make one phone, make one chip. But I know the CDMA and the GSM, I get it. But that's what we really need to come to. Stop throwing skins on the Android. Stop, putting your own flavor on there. Stop bloatwaring everything up, carriers. Stop. Just give me the vanilla OS, untouched, Android, like I've got now. Just like on Apple devices, on iOS devices. I've never owned an iPhone. Crazy, I've never owned an iPhone. I've always been either BlackBerry initially when it was a smartphone, and then moved into Android, and I've been Android ever since. But I mean, Apple's really said, don't touch our stuff. Don't touch the software. You can't do it. These phone manufacturers need to do, or Android needs to be the same way. Now, I understand that, they put it, Google puts it out there, and we can tweak it and do all this and flavor that and season here and season there. Okay, I get it. That's cool. But I think phone manufacturers just need to stick with vanilla Android so that users can get the updates that they need when they need it. So people out there that aren't even on Jelly Bean and definitely don't have any idea about KitKat, I feel bad for you. I'm sorry. But, talk to your phone manufacturer. Buy a phone that just has no skin on it. Stop putting the skins on there. We've got enough skin, with these devices. We don't need the other flavor. Just stick with Android. Vanilla Android, plain. Anyway, I went on a crazy rant, and I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I just wanted to say I think T-Mobile's doing a fantastic job as far as getting in people's faces, saying, you know what, we're not going anywhere, and we're going to take people from you. I mean, again, that's like some guerrilla marketing, some guerrilla business tactics, or however you want to spin it. But I think that they're doing something right. So far, I've been satisfied being back with T-Mobile after about a year hiatus. Call quality has been fantastic. Of course, I love the fact from a business standpoint and even personal, when it comes to my pocketbook, I don't carry a pocketbook, but you know what I mean. I pay half. Actually, I pay half than what I was doing over at AT&T for basically the same service. I actually had worse coverage on AT&T. Like, I had okay coverage in my office and in my home, which was good, but then out and about, I was dropping more calls on AT&T. But again, whatever your use case and the spectrum that you have available to you, that's where you have to go. That's why I think we need choice. So get out of the mindset of this whole subsidy thing. Get the device, because I don't understand why I wouldn't buy this phone. And people say, well, I don't have enough money to put that up front. Well, you just bought yourself a $600-700 iPad, and you can't buy anywhere from a $400 to $600 smartphone. And people are like, oh, that's a phone. I don't know if it's like the size or what, but dude, this is a computer in your pocket. Seriously, I mean, I can do a lot of things on this smartphone. So it's psychology. It really is because and we just need to get over it. We need to get ourselves out of that mindset of subsidized devices and just get on and stop being stuck in a contract. So get with it. Anyway, CES 2014 still happening, but we'll be wrapping up. I'm not here, obviously, or there. I wanted to be there, but just couldn't be. Um, but those are my opinions for CES. This is just my take on what's going on out there and some of the big news. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this now. But I thanks so much for tuning in to the first episode of A Shot of Technology here. And I don't know, appreciate all the likes, the shares, the listens, and everything, and subscribing. And I'll be sure to provide you with more content out there, and at least my opinion, and of course, news, reviews that's happening out there. So anyway, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2014. Enjoy all of the cool news that's coming out of CES, and I look forward to maybe picking up a couple of these pieces of technology that will soon launch after CES is done. So anyway, thanks so much, and I'll catch you on the next show.